Welcome, everyone. This is the Abundant Investor Podcast, and we are Beth and Christine, your hosts. We are here to show you how you can live your rich life right now with the power of an abundance mindset and tools the wealthy have used for years that are accessible to the rest of us. Things like real estate investing and using the powerful benefits of life insurance. We're so glad you're here. Now let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Abundant Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Beth.
And I'm Christine, your other host.
And we're so happy to be here. We have something really fun in store today. We are the Abundant Investor. We spend a lot of time talking about how to lift women up and how to teach women how to expand their financial knowledge, especially as it relates to investing in real estate. And who better to ask questions about that than our very own Christine here with us.
I'm excited for this conversation.
This is so fun. So we are going to be open. We're going to be transparent, and we're hopefully going to be very educational. You should walk away from this podcast having a really great idea on how you could get started investing in real estate yourself. And stay to the end because we have some really great resources for you that we're going to talk about as well. So that's a lot. Christine, if you don't mind, can you get us started talking a little bit about how your real estate journey began?
Absolutely. So my real estate investing journey really began in 2019. And prior to that, I had been purchasing real estate from the time that I was 24. And my purchases throughout my life until 2019 were really buying where I was going to live with my family, initially on my own, and then with my family. And one of the best things I did was buy a condo instead of rent when I was 24. It set me up for success to build equity in a market. We are in the Boston area. So anyone who's in a major market, real estate's almost always going to go up and appreciate. So I always recommend this move if you can do it, if you can borrow some money for the down payment or save up enough for a down payment. And we can talk about all the different types of investing later. There are some different ways to do it. I turned a 1-bedroom condo into a 2-bedroom, had my friend rent from me, and that helped it didn't pay my whole mortgage. It paid a lot of the mortgage though. And then it set me up to build equity when I sold it 5 years later. So I tell you that story too, because for me, it was when I go back, I think we can always go back in our lives and look at the breadcrumbs. And that was a sign to me that I had this instinct to buy that property. No one in my family told me that was something I should do. I didn't see anyone in my family do it. It was really this nudge. And I had one friend who had purchased a property pretty young. And I thought, that seems like a really wise idea. So anyone can do this. There are really creative ways to find funding, and we'll talk about those in future podcasts. But the breadcrumbs were there. And so it was really interesting. In 2019, I decided with my husband to purchase a quote unquote vacation home, because I say the air quotes really because we wanted to rent it out. It was a vacation/investment property that we would be able to use some of the time, and then we would rent it out. And my hope was, we can do this. This is really exciting that we can purchase a house in Cape Cod. It's about an hour and a half from Boston where we have a house, and we can do that, and we can pay for most of it with other people's money, with our renters, right? Our renters would support that.
Great.
So yeah, and that was really exciting. And I had the vision of this house, and it came to me during a meditation, and I just kept thinking about it and thought that makes a lot of sense. So it was clear to me this is something that I really wanted, and that's how we got started.
That's great. So you had the mindset, you had the breadcrumbs of, having experience buying and selling your personal real estate. It all paid off well for you. You had a mindset that you would find the right house, and that was within your grasp to do this. And you knew the location. You knew you wanted to be on the Cape. So those are some really big things. One, get your mindset, be prepared to say, yes, I can do this. Two is know the location you want to consider. And so you had those two kind of check. How did you go about finding the actual property?
So I had a general idea of the location, and I picked a place on Cape Cod where I knew fairly well because I had vacation there. It wasn't necessarily my most favorite town, right? It wasn't my dream town. And I still really liked this location a lot. This location was very central. I knew it well. And I also knew it was less than an hour and a half from where I lived at the time. So I didn't want to be driving an extra half hour. And there were fewer houses on the market in this other town that in the future will probably buy something in.
Yeah.
So those were the key factors. I went online. I pulled up when I got, clear that this is what I wanted. Going back to your mindset piece for a second, though, I'll say I got clear on what I wanted and I knew it was time to take action. So I knew I had to make a bold move that was a little bit outside, well, maybe a lot. Like it was outside my comfort zone for sure. Listen, I'm not someone that had this house on a vision board for 10 years, or someone who grew up with a house on Cape Cod and just naturally expected that I would have that. This was something that I got really clear on really quickly in an environment where I felt just pumped that I was going to do it. I just was going to go get it. And I was coached, and it's the type of thing when in my coaching with my clients, it's the type of thing I hope that I'm setting them up for, is to believe in themselves and believe that they're making life happen. So I went online, I found this house, and I just had this feeling that I had to go see this house. It was a fixer-upper. And I had the realization that with my husband having just left one of his jobs, he left a career in coaching. He had been a collegiate coach for over 20 years. He wasn't working on weekends anymore. So that was part of the gift of him.
So you put him right to work.
Yes. So I said, honey, would you want to go in on this property together? I think together we can do a really amazing job. And I really needed his support to feel confident that we would have the time and the energy and the figure outable nature together. And he's got more handy skills than I had to fix it up.
Excellent.
Okay. So he was a little skeptical and he was kind of on board. And now, how are we going to pay for this? Well,
that was my next question. Words right out of my mouth.
We know each other well.
Yes.
So, the previous year, I had taken out a HELOC on my home, a home equity line of credit. And I took it out, I think, in case we wanted to do a renovation. I liked the idea of this HELOC to have cash accessible if I wanted it. And here's the beautiful thing about the HELOC, right? For those who may not know, you can take out this home equity line of credit on your house, because a lot of us have equity in our house. Some people's houses are paid off. It's amazing. Some people might have $100,000 in equity. You can take out part of that equity in a home equity line of credit, and you don't have to draw from it. And you're not going to pay any interest until you actually use the money. So I was so glad I had that set up. And I said, I had no experience. I wasn't in any real estate investing groups, and I didn't have a mentor. And I said, can we use this HELOC for a down payment, or to supplement what we have in savings for a down payment on this house? I Googled it. And Google suggested that, yes, this was doable. And I said, all right, let's go for it. And that was the beginning.
All right. So you get your mindset clear. This is what you want to do. You have the general location. You've now started searching on Zillow. Now you know you have enough cash to put down as a down payment. I want to hear about the crunching the numbers. How did you go about, how much did the house cost, if you don't mind saying? And then how did you know that what you could possibly get for rent, if you rented it out as a vacation rental, and could you float the full mortgage if you needed to? How did you go about really crunching those numbers? Because I think it's a really important thing for people to know.
I think that's great. And I love being transparent about this. The house had been on the market for at least 9 months. I knew that when I saw that there was an opportunity to get a good deal in this house. So I don't remember exactly what the list price was, but I want to say it was about $375,000. And I think we negotiated down to $350,000.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay. So in my number crunching, I knew what the mortgage payment looked like at $350,000 with 20% down, which is pretty standard for an investment property. Sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 25. And there are other ways to do it differently. Real estate, you can be really creative. I knew none of that at the time though. And so I did the math. I went online, I found a mortgage calculator to calculate what my monthly payments would be. I looked at what the taxes were, the insurance, added those in, and I've always bundled those with my mortgage payments. So it was, what was the monthly expense going to look like? Okay. And then I went on to a local site called We Need a Vacation. It's an alternative to Airbnb on Cape Cod. And I looked at what other homes were renting for in the summer. And my math to make it work for us was that if we rented it out about 10 weeks over the summer, could we cover 75% of the annual mortgage cost?
Yeah.
It's very seasonal, right?
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked out.
Yep.
And actually the numbers were a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
And so keep in mind, I wasn't thinking, I'm a real estate investor. I did not have that mindset at the time. I wanted a place where my family could spend time and make memories over the years.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and purchased it. I made sure that we had some money set aside for renovations. So one of the things I did, knowing this house needed work, is I brought a contractor in during the negotiation process. So I brought a contractor in to give us some estimates. I got the contractor name from a childhood friend of mine who has a house in the next town over. She used him for renovating her kitchen. We liked him a lot, and he was able to do the work. So
perfect. So
all just made it
network of just people you knew.
exactly.
Yeah, and you got a trusted recommendation. You got somebody to give you an idea of what the cost would be to make the renovations you wanted to make.
Exactly. We knew too that we would do some of the work ourselves, and we had the contractor quote everything so that we would be able to have line items and decide what was better for him to do and what was better for us to do.
That makes a lot of sense.
We knew that there were things that we had to do and things that were optional. And I started pricing things out. So while he gave me a cost to demo the kitchen, I went to IKEA and looked at their kitchens and said, can I do an IKEA kitchen? I had a friend who had done one who lives in Providence, and I'd seen it and I liked it. And I thought, for this type of house, this feels like what we want to do. And I priced it out and the numbers were falling in line. So it made sense. And we had the money set aside for the renovation as well, made sure we had that. And we were drawing on some money that I've been a saver. So I've been like squirreling my money away. And this was new territory for me to be taking money that I anticipated was for later in my life and start to spend it. So I was a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I had done the work. I had done the personal development work to know that when you're getting out of your comfort zone, it's a growth edge, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So I grew a lot in the process too. So we renovated it, and we purchased in September, and we started renovations probably in October.
And can you just at a high level, what were a couple of things that you guys did on your own, and what were a couple of things that you hired out? Just a couple of examples of each.
Yes, definitely. So we will probably never touch plumbing and electrical work.
Yep, that's smart. People that have licenses in that, and can pull all that great stuff.
Exactly. So we relied on our contractors' subs for those. They were licensed, and we decided to do flooring. So we decided that we could do the luxury vinyl flooring, the laminate flooring. We could do some of that ourselves. We decided to put up shiplap over wallpaper. So that was one solution. We decided to put the shiplap up after we had scraped one wall of wallpaper and said there's got to be another way. And actually, it looks so much better.
It looks so great. Yeah.
We had our contractor install the kitchen cabinets. So we picked them out, we purchased them, all of that, and he installed those. He did we had a leaky window he had to fix, skylights.
Yeah.
And then, we did all the painting. We did things that we had experience with or that were not too far out of our initial comfort zone.
That's excellent. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the timing of that was pretty good too, because did some of this work happen when the world shut down during COVID? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So we were several months into the renovation process,
Yeah.
and my husband Steve was going down and working on it on the weekends quite a bit. Occasionally I would go down, and I've worked for myself for a while. I had a little flexibility to go down maybe on a Friday and stay into the weekend. And yeah, what happened in March when the world shut down was that we found ourselves a couple weeks later with more flexibility, with a lot of things canceled,
Yes.
a lot of my kids' activities canceled. So we were able to spend more time down there as a family, and we put our kids to work a bit.
That's
Now,
great.
I would say they spent a lot of time walking the neighborhood and walking to the candy store. And there were times that they also, we got them involved in painting and such.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're in 2020. You bought the house. You've made the renovations. Now, did you do any rentals right away, or how did you
Oh,
go about?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
how?
in my head, we were renting this the summer of 2020, and there
Yes.
was that uncertainty of whether
Sure. Yeah.
people were going to vacation. But I was pretty optimistic that people would
Yeah.
still go to the Cape for vacation and
Yeah.
want to get away, because life
I
was
think
not,
right.
yeah, people weren't feeling so great about this pandemic. And you could go there and be at the beach and be outside, right? So
Sure.
I
So how
knew,
did you decide what to charge?
yeah, great question. So I knew we had to get this on the market as soon as possible. And so we put it up with a couple rooms ready. So I was really thinking about, how can I capture the essence of this home where I'm only showing the things that are ready to show, right? And I did
Right.
show some work in progress and explain what we were doing. And then I went on competitive, I looked at other properties in the area and saw what they were charging. And we took our best guess. And, it turns out our best guess was pretty accurate and maybe on the low side, because we learned over the years that people would pay more, and we continue to take good care of the property. So we have raised the rates over the years, which is really, I think a lot of people don't consider that. Listen, it's not always possible, right? Like in some locations, the rates are only going to maybe go up 1 or 2% every year, or maybe the market's not great and people are not, might have to lower the rates. People were willing to pay even more. And so we realized that, and we changed things up a bit.
Excellent. So you
Yeah.
had you got your first summer under your belt. What was your occupancy rate like that first summer? And then I'd love to hear about that. And then how about the shoulder seasons? What was your experience with that?
Yep. So our summer was booked. We took a week for ourselves. I don't even think it was a full week. We took a couple days. Generally, places in this vacation spot rent week to week, and we filled it up, and we didn't have trouble filling it up. In fact, we had a couple friends come and rent it, and the first guests that came were our neighbors. And I remember they were coming at 3:00 for check-in on a Saturday, and I was at Target that day in several towns away, picking up last minute items, right?
Yeah.
And scrambling to get that place ready down to the wire. And we had our first guests, and it was great when they were, they had a great experience. And we booked that whole summer, and then we had people surprisingly book into September. Most of September is a popular time on Cape Cod. And then we got a few rentals in the off season. I don't think we put our property on Airbnb until that off season, not even that fall, but maybe that winter. So we didn't have a lot of off season bookings. And then we had somebody who was able to use the property for 3 months over the winter, who was, again, it was a pandemic. And they were renovating their kitchen back here where we live near Boston, and wanted to go spend that time at the beach.
Great. That's great. So check a success. You have your first property, you have the renovations done, you have it furnished, you have all the amenities, the everything you need, and you have a great first summer. I know that you have a second property. Tell me about that. So you use that first property to help you fund another one. Can you take us through what that looked like and how that came to be?
Absolutely. After 2 years, we thought about the equity we had in that first property, and we said, let's sell it and go do it again. We were a little naive. We put it on the market. We had somebody bid on it right away, and at the home inspection, they got cold feet.
Yeah.
So they backed out, and I said, well, I trust that the best and highest good is happening, and this is in our favor. I don't understand it, and it's in our favor.
Yeah.
And so we were on vacation. We had started to kind of celebrate that we were going to get a cash full price offer, and then it fell through. Okay. So my instinct was to open Zillow and start looking anyways. Let's see what else is out there.
Yeah.
And we found another property that similar to the first one that had been on the market for a little bit. This one had just had a price reduction. It had been on for 30 days. It's 2021 now, so we're in COVID, and people are starting to buy up properties, and construction's starting to get a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
And we had, this property came up where the septic, the septic hadn't passed Title V, which has to happen in Massachusetts. And I said, well, that's interesting. That's probably keeping a lot of people away. Let's go look. Yeah. And we went and looked. We saw this outdated kind of salt box style house and said, oh, we could just see it. We could, we had the vision for what it could be. It was really clear. We put an offer on the property and we ended up getting it. So I should preface that we realized we were able, and we didn't even have to sell the first house. We could take the equity in that house, refinance, do a cash out refinance, take that cash and use it to put the down payment on this next house. It's exactly what we did. So now we had a new mortgage on the first place. We got a new mortgage on we got a first mortgage on the second house. And then the renovations were definitely more costly. So here we pulled some money out of our IRA. Oh my gosh. Like I never thought I would do this. And it was such a smart move. It was a really good investment for us. Yes, we paid some penalties on that. And because of the cash out refi, we had a lot of that money that we were able to use for renovation. We renovated this property. It was a rinse and repeat. What did we learn? What can we do? We poured more money into, and you always learn new things, right?
Right.
We did this one a little bit differently. We made the finishes a bit more high end. We did a lot of hardscape and landscaping, and I'm so glad we did. Initially, I had a moment where I had, oh my gosh, do we overdo it? And now I know that this property is yielding the interest that it is not because it's as big as the other one, but because there's a certain buyer for this type of property. Right. And people really like it that way.
They like to have, when they go, I think what you're saying is when people go on vacation, they want their home to be as comfortable that they're renting as the home that they're coming from, and they're willing to pay for it. And so you did some higher end finishes and it's paid off. So take us to where we are now. I'd love to hear, are both properties providing cash flow? What does your occupancy look like? If you can just give us some of those details, that would be really great.
Absolutely. So they're booked. We have been booked every year in both properties that they've both been up most of June, almost always most of June through at least the second or third week in September. Mm-hmm. And that's the high season there. Sure. The shoulder season weekends, if we don't take a weekend for ourselves, they will all book. So in one of the properties, just for example, right now we are booked through, I think there's one weekend in November that we're not booked, and someone's booked all of Thanksgiving week. In the other property, we had somebody ask if they could book it from October 15th until May 31st. So that's awesome. We took a different approach with that type of tenant where we met them in person because they're like a long-term tenant. And that was a really good fit for us, that tenant. And so we said yes to that. And in general, though, without that type of arrangement, I would say our overall occupancy rate for the year is around the 70%, which for that part of that area that typically doesn't have tourists in the winter, I'm really happy with.
I love it. So you have what you thought was going to be just a vacation home that you could rent out from time to time to what sounds like a flourishing business. It's actually netting you positive cash flow.
That's what's happened. Yes, I would say our income on both properties now is over $200,000. The profit is around, it's over 50% of that. And it's enabled us to think bigger and given us the mindset that we are real estate investors. So
I love it.
Yeah.
That is great. You are a real estate investor for sure. So your first two are short-term rentals, and we're going to talk a little bit at the end. For anybody that doesn't know, Christine and I have put together a course called A to Z Airbnb. It's everything you need to know, what Christine talked about and all the details that we didn't get to. And we used all of Christine's amazing experience. We used the experience that I've had in a career of 20 years in real estate and combined it and put together a course. We had several women take that course from us live, and we've created an online version that's on demand that we'll put the link to it in the show notes, and you can learn all the details around how to analyze a market, how to analyze a property, how to furnish, market, everything. So that is awesome. But before we get into more detail around that, I'd love to know about the next chapter in your real estate investing career, because you've moved beyond short-term rentals and now you own a multifamily. And so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure thing. I think having this new mentality around being a real estate investor has been helpful. It's launched me into much more research, much more understanding of how people approach real estate investing. So now that I have a bit more community, and you and I are building community around this too, Beth, there's a lot more knowledge that I had going into this next investment. So we were considering an investment wherever my oldest daughter is a freshman in college. And we began to consider wherever she went to school might be an opportunity for us to invest in a different market. And she chose her school, and fortunately for us, we saw a really interesting opportunity when that happened. So not only is the average price of housing much lower than it is in a major metro like Boston or New York or San Francisco, it's an area where we're below the national average. And one of the things that we've learned is that there is a lot of opportunity that housing prices will really rise over the next 5-10 years, specifically in this geographic location, due to industry picking up and a large company coming in and really building up this area, which to us, when we heard that, not only were we excited for my daughter's school and what that meant for the local community, but kind of our light bulb, went off for us that, oh, this is really interesting. We are maybe onto something here. Mm-hmm. So we thought this would be a great place to buy a multifamily. So I drove out and did a tour of the city with a local realtor. I went out and asked a lot of questions of the neighborhoods where I was started to be interested. And I had some criteria for what I felt like would be a good fit for us. Mm-hmm. And so we landed on one part of town. It's pretty close to the university, and there's not a lot of undergrad housing right in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It's steps to a coffee shop, to some great restaurants. It's in a little bit of an artsy part of town. You know that there's professors around, you know that there's families around. And so we found this beautiful old property that reminded us of the types of place that we lived in when we were in our 20s here in Boston. So beautiful old Victorian style-ish building with room and opportunity to expand, to potentially make it 3 units. And there were long-term tenants in one of the units. The other was vacant. We knew that we could immediately jump in and add some equity by doing some renovations. So that's actually where we're at right now. And it was really important to find a local team right away to entrust with the construction, with property management, with overseeing the property. It helps that our daughter is there and has witnessed our previous renovations, so she can jump in and help us out and be other eyes on the ground. And I just feel so excited. And it's a whole new step in our journey. It's a new city. It's a new type of real estate. It brings new opportunities. It's brought new connections, and it's brought so much more than just the house itself, right? Right. I can see it's the beginning of something else that I really look forward to being on the journey of and flourishing with. Yeah.
I love it. So here's a city that up until last year, had you ever stepped into it?
No.
All right. So it's a place you've never been, different than your first 2 Cape houses where it was a little nostalgia. You knew it. Here you are going to a place you've never been, and you find an area that you like. But during that trip, if I recall, you didn't actually see the property that you ended up buying, correct?
That's right.
So you buy a property really sight unseen.
I did. I did. So I really had to trust the agent that I was working with, that he had an understanding of what I was looking for, that, his expertise was such and his team's expertise was such that they would guide me in the right direction.
Yeah.
We did it over Zoom. A lot of people want to be buying in this neighborhood. So I think that there were 9 or 11 offers on this property. And I really leveraged the experience I had when I was out there. We did put an offer on a different property 2 streets over. We didn't get that. So I had that experience, and that's fine. And that happens. And it actually taught me that I was going to have to probably bid higher. And we added an escalation clause to this offer. And I learned as much as I could without actually being there in person, and took that leap of faith.
I love it. So that is amazing, Christine. You're up in a place you haven't really spent too much time in. You purchase a 2-family Victorian home, sight unseen, and you get up there and you love it. And but this time you decide to stay at another Airbnb. And tell me about that experience.
Yeah. So I think, staying at Airbnbs in this market was market research for me. And I think I've done it 3 times now, and I've had different experiences each time. And I saw an opportunity because I did see that there were quite a few Airbnbs that I wouldn't want to stay at. And that partially fueled my interest in opening an STR, short-term rental, in this market. And what I did, though, instead of thinking of the Airbnb, I did see it one Airbnb I really liked. It was super cozy. I could see myself decorating it the same way. It was really well done. I felt really cared for as a guest. And that's how I want my guests to feel in my properties, right? So I stayed in touch with the host, and I knew he was a realtor. I was working with a realtor already, an agent already. And I just felt like I have to keep this person close. So I'm going to reach out. So once we had purchased the property sight unseen, we went out for the closing. I went out for the walkthrough. And actually, while my attorney was doing the closing, I was having coffee with the host of this Airbnb. Right. And we just connected, and I liked him a lot. And he had started to he's a full-time investor managing his Airbnbs and long-term rentals in this market. And I talked to him about helping me manage mine, at least the construction process. I have tenants there. If something goes wrong, I know he knows the market. He's lived there for a really long time. I felt like I could trust him. He brought his fiance over for me to meet her, for us to meet each other. And I knew that this was someone that I wanted to work with. And so we worked something out. He became my property manager the next morning. I hired him and his fiance to be the team. And, I had found already a contractor through my agent that helped me to purchase the property. I met with some other agents just to get the lay of the land out there and understand, who specializes in what, and get some different opinions, because I do see that market growing quite a bit. And I know there's a bit of a housing shortage now. So, just really gathering as much information as I could. And when you find someone you connect with, I think you want to captivate that connection. So
I love it.
That was awesome. And
that's great.
Now we're under construction, and we've got tenants in one unit that we're managing for the first time. And that's a whole new experience. And I would definitely, we haven't even, done the renovation. It's been weeks, and I'm already feeling like I would invest in this market again for several reasons. So I think you have to listen, and women have this ability, we have to listen to our intuition and what's calling us and what we're naturally good at. And what you're doing that's driving income for you may not be the thing you studied in college. And that's fine. It's great. Right. Like, we have so much knowledge and skills and ability to figure stuff out.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's fascinating. And I think for anybody listening here, I want anybody listening to walk away with that this is possible. And you don't have to, be this person who is, spent their whole life growing up with investing or whatever it may be. You just have to have the right mindset. You have to have the confidence to believe in your intuition and go with it. And it can happen. So I love it. It's really, it's a great story. I love being alongside you here as we build out the Abundant Investor, and using that experience that you've had as evidence and a way to coach people through this. And I think it's terrific. And I mentioned earlier in this podcast that we have a course that people can take called A to Z Airbnb. And it's really everything you need to know about how to find a market, how to analyze a property, how to prepare the property, how to furnish it, how to market it, and really how to make your guests feel so well cared for, which is really a great thing. So thank you so much for being so transparent, for sharing your story. Your journey is really just beginning, and it's an inspiration to me, and I can't wait to find my first true investment in real estate, as opposed to the using our home as a which we've done. We've built new construction and all that kind of stuff, but outside of the homes that we're living in, I'm inspired by you, and I hope all our listeners are too. And I hope you guys go ahead and take that class if you're thinking about buying a short-term rental. The link to it is in the show notes. It's $299, and you're going to get a lot more than $299 out of the course. And we're also making ourselves available to do one-on-one coaching. So if you're already, at a point where you're ready to bite the bullet, and you maybe want somebody to review numbers with you or go through a scenario, that's available too. And there'll be a link in our show notes for that as well to sign up for a one-on-one call and learn more about that.
And I just want to say, Beth, I'm excited for you too. I know it's going to happen, continue to happen for both of us, and you're going to love it and be great at it. And it's so accessible. And I love talking about this. I love working with people on deals. I also want to mention we have some really wonderful worksheets that we've spent a lot of time refining to look at the numbers, and we can talk you through what numbers you should expect to see. What are you looking for? Cash on cash return, all of those key metrics. So please feel free to reach out, and I encourage you to take this class if you have any interest, because I am sure you'll walk away with something. And if you want to sit down with us one-on-one and walk through deals that you're thinking about or that you're in the middle of, there's nothing we love more. So please reach out.
Excellent. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Abundant Investor Podcast and learned something new. We would love to hear from you. And if you did get something from this episode, please subscribe and rate this podcast so more people can find it and live their rich lives too. And remember, an abundant mindset means there's always plenty to go around, and through giving, we receive.